De Morgan's a funny little guy who wrote laws where we kind of convert one logical operator to another. So I think this is the answers to the assignment right in the slides and video that they give you. But essentially we can sort of, if we have a not outside of parentheses, we can reverse the operator and make both of these nots, and it's the same as they give it. If you're not tall enough and old enough, or either not tall enough or not old enough. It kind of works out logically. That's that a funny little guy. Here's you. You're a very tiny stick figure, and he's glaring down at you. It's Augustus De Morgan. Not A and B is the same as not A or not B. Not A or B is the same as not A and not B. Did we distribute the exclamation point across, sort of? Not A or B. Here's some Venn diagrams comparison. If we are tall enough and we are old enough, if we're either one of those things, we're in one of these groups. If we're tall enough and old enough, we're only in the intersection. What do you think? We're gonna go from tall enough and old enough, or not tall enough and old enough. So we kind of reverse that. So here's tall enough and old enough. We want the opposite. We want tall enough and old enough, the opposite. So it's gonna be everything but the center. How about the other way? Our goal is to show that not tall enough and old enough is the same as not tall enough and not old enough. So we'll look at each one of those. Not tall enough is everything outside. So everything that's either not tall enough or old enough, or the old enough center. And the opposite. Boom. They're kind of equivalent. And that's how this assignment works. So I gave us a handout in class where we kind of go through the truth tables. You would kind of fill them out. If A is true and B is true, then these are both true, obviously. The opposite of them both being true is false. Not A and not B. What's the opposite of A and B? False and false. So not A or not B, which is false and false, is false. And so on and so forth. So we needed to convert these. If we filled out the whole thing, we would see the conversion, and we'll kind of just do that in the amusement park assignment. So really, our job was to kind of change those Boolean statements on line 16 and 32. So here we have an exclamation point outside of parentheses, and we have an N in the center. So this is the same as, I'm going to write it underneath and then copy and paste. Not old enough or not tall enough. If you're not old enough and tall enough, then you're either one of those. That was kind of shown on the Venn diagram. That's our conversion. We get rid of that extra line. Then down here, we're going to distribute. This is the distribution. So if we can't swim or we don't have a life, or we have a life jacket, not can't swim, not have a life jacket. We can't go on the water or the raft ride if you don't have a life jacket on, or if you can't swim. You want to have one of those, right? You want to be able to swim, or you want to have a life jacket so you don't have to swim. So if you don't have either of those, if you can't swim, not can swim, and you don't have a life jacket, not have a life jacket, then you can't go in the pool. So that's like the logic behind the two lines we're changing. Otherwise, we're just kind of distributing across the parentheses and dropping them. That's another way to look at it. That's all we really had to do, change those two little statements. If you don't change anything in them all, we'll mark you right, but it's not. I have to grade it myself, so just be aware of that. You have to change those two statements to look at the equivalence.